Welcome to Epic English Stories, where we unlock the secrets of English mastery through the power of storytelling and strategic learning. Picture this. You've spent countless hours in English classrooms, memorized grammar rules until your head spins, and watched English movies with subtitles. Yet when someone asks you a simple question in English, your mind freezes. The words you know so well suddenly vanish into thin air. Sound familiar? Here's the truth that language schools don't want you to know. You're not failing because you're not smart enough. You're struggling because you've been missing the most crucial piece of the English learning puzzle. A piece so simple, yet so powerful that it can transform your language journey forever. Today, I'm going to reveal the game-changing method that turns struggling students into confident English speakers. This isn't about studying harder. It's about studying smarter. It's about discovering the natural way your brain actually learns language, the same way you mastered your mother tongue as a child. Are you ready to discover what that missing piece is? Drop a comment below and tell me, what's your biggest struggle with English right now? Let's dive into your transformation journey together. Let me share something that will change how you think about English forever. The secret isn't hidden in complex grammar books or expensive courses. It's been right in front of us all along. Yet most learners completely ignore it. That secret is reading. I know what you're thinking. Reading? That's it. That sounds too simple. But here's what makes reading revolutionary. It's exactly how your brain is designed to absorb language naturally and effortlessly. Think about how children learn. They don't start with grammar charts or vocabulary lists. They absorb language through stories, repetition, and context. They hear the same patterns thousands of times until those patterns become automatic. Reading does the exact same thing for adult learners, but faster and more efficiently. When you read English stories, something magical happens in your brain. You're not just seeing words on a page, you're witnessing language in action. Every sentence shows you how real English works. Every paragraph demonstrates grammar patterns without the pain of memorization. Every story fills your mind with authentic vocabulary used in natural contexts. Here's the science. Your brain learns through pattern recognition. Traditional studying forces you to memorize isolated rules and words, which your short-term memory quickly forgets. But reading exposes you to the same patterns repeatedly in different contexts. This builds long-term memory connections that stick forever. Consider Maria, one of my students from Colombia. She studied English grammar for 5 years, could pass any written test, but couldn't hold a basic conversation. I gave her one assignment: read one simple story every night before bed. No grammar exercises, no vocabulary lists, just reading for pleasure. 2 months later, Maria walked into class speaking more fluently than ever before. Her grammar had improved dramatically without studying a single rule. Her vocabulary had expanded naturally. Most importantly, she finally felt confident expressing herself in English. What happened? Reading had rewired her brain for English. Instead of translating from Spanish to English in her head, she began thinking directly in English. The patterns she absorbed from stories became automatic responses. Reading had given her what traditional methods never could: a natural feel for the language. But reading offers even more benefits than improved speaking. It enhances your spelling because you see words correctly written thousands of times. It improves your writing because you absorb proper sentence structure and style. It builds your listening skills because you hear the language in your mind as you read. It's the ultimate multi-skill booster. The best part? Reading is enjoyable. Unlike grinding through grammar exercises or memorizing word lists, reading entertains you while teaching you. When learning feels like fun, you do more of it. When you do more, you improve faster. It's a positive cycle that accelerates your progress exponentially. Most language learners focus on output, speaking and writing, before building sufficient input. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with an empty palette. Reading fills your palette with colors, giving you the raw materials needed for fluent expression. This is why some people seem to learn English naturally, while others struggle for years. The natural learners are more talented. They simply consume more English input through reading, movies, and conversations. They feed their brains the patterns and vocabulary needed for automatic language processing. Let me take you inside your brain and show you exactly what happens when you read English. Understanding this process will motivate you to pick up that book and never put it down. Your brain is an incredible pattern matching machine. Every time you read an English sentence, multiple cognitive processes activate simultaneously. You're processing word meanings, sentence structures, grammatical relationships, and contextual clues all at once. This creates neural pathways that strengthen with each reading session. Traditional language learning treats grammar as a set of rules to memorize. But here's the revolutionary insight. Grammar isn't really rules, it's patterns. When you read stories, you see these patterns in action hundreds of times. Your subconscious mind naturally absorbs them without conscious effort. For example, instead of memorizing use have been for present perfect continuous, you read sentences like, she has been waiting for an hour, they have been studying all night, I've been thinking about you. After encountering this pattern repeatedly in different contexts, your brain automatically knows when and how to use it. This is called implicit learning, the same process that allowed you to master your native language as a child. You never studied grammar rules in your mother tongue, yet you speak it perfectly. Reading recreates this natural learning environment for English. But vocabulary acquisition through reading is even more powerful. When you learn words from lists, you only get definitions. When you meet words and stories, you get context, emotion, and usage patterns. Your brain creates rich associations that make words unforgettable. Consider the word furious. A vocabulary list tells you it means very angry. But when you read, Sarah was furious when she discovered the betrayal, her hands shaking with rage, you experience the word emotionally. You understand its intensity, its context, its emotional weight. This multidimensional learning makes the word permanently yours. Reading also develops what linguists call language intuition, the ability to know what sounds right without knowing why. Native speakers constantly use this intuition. They don't consciously apply grammar rules. They simply know what feels correct. Reading builds this same intuition in English learners. Research from the University of Southern California found that students who read extensively scored significantly higher on grammar tests than students who only studied grammar rules. Even more remarkably, the reading group outperformed the grammar group on standardized language proficiency exams across all skill areas. Here's another fascinating discovery. Extensive reading physically changes your brain structure. MRI studies show that multilingual readers have denser gray matter in areas responsible for language processing and executive control. Reading literally builds a better brain for language learning. The compound effect is extraordinary. Each story you read makes the next story easier. Each book builds upon previous learning, creating exponential improvement over time. Students often report breakthrough moments around the 100,000 word mark, when English suddenly clicks and becomes intuitive. Consider Ahmed, a Syrian refugee who arrived in America speaking minimal English. Traditional classes frustrated him because grammar explanations in Arabic confused rather than clarified. I introduced him to graded readers, simple books written specifically for English learners. Ahmed started with children's books, progressing to young adult novels, then contemporary fiction. Within 18 months of consistent reading, he was accepted to community college and later transferred to university. Reading had given him not just language skills, but confidence and opportunities. The key insight is this. Your brain learns best when it's relaxed and engaged. Reading provides this optimal learning state. Unlike stressful grammar exercises or intimidating speaking practice, reading is private, comfortable, and completely under your control. You can pause, reflect, or reread without judgment. This relaxed state activates what researchers call the acquisition mode rather than the learning mode. In acquisition mode, your brain absorbs language naturally and permanently. In learning mode, you consciously study information that quickly fades from memory. The language learning industry has sold us a lie. They've convinced millions of students that fluency comes from memorizing grammar rules, drilling vocabulary lists, and practicing artificial conversations. But science proves otherwise, and the proof lies in reading's overwhelming superiority. Let me share groundbreaking research that will shock you. In Fiji, researchers divided English learners into 3 groups. Group 1 received traditional grammar instruction. Group 2 reads silently during class time. Group 3 listened while teachers read aloud. The results? Both reading groups dramatically outperformed the grammar group on every measure, including grammar tests. Think about that. Students who never studied grammar rules scored higher on grammar exams than students who studied nothing but grammar rules. This wasn't a fluke. The same experiment was repeated in Singapore, India, and South Africa with identical results. Reading wins every time. Why does this happen? Because traditional methods teach you about English, while reading teaches you English itself. Grammar rules are like studying the blueprint of a house instead of actually living in it. Reading lets you experience the language from the inside out. Traditional vocabulary learning is equally flawed. When you memorize word lists, you're learning isolated fragments. Your brain has no context for these words, no emotional connection, no usage patterns. Most memorized vocabulary disappears within weeks because it has no meaningful foundation. But when you encounter words and stories, they come with complete contexts. You see how native speakers actually use them. You understand their emotional weight, their appropriate situations, their grammatical patterns. This creates permanent learning that traditional methods simply cannot match. Consider pronunciation, an area where traditional methods particularly fail. Classroom drilling focuses on individual sounds and artificial sentences. But reading develops what linguists call phonological awareness, an intuitive understanding of English rhythm, stress, and intonation patterns. Even silent reading improves pronunciation because your brain processes the sound patterns internally. The speaking drill obsession is perhaps the most damaging myth. Students spend hours practicing conversations they're not ready for, using vocabulary they don't truly know, following patterns they haven't internalized. It's like trying to play piano concerts before learning scales. Reading reverses this process. It fills your mental reservoir with authentic language patterns, natural vocabulary, and intuitive grammar. When you finally speak, you have genuine content to express and natural patterns to express it with. Your speech becomes fluent because it's based on solid internal knowledge. Let me share Lisa's transformation. She spent 3 years in traditional English classes, always struggling to speak naturally. Her sentences were grammatically correct, but sounded robotic. Teachers praised her accuracy, but she knew something was missing: natural flow. I challenged Lisa to abandon grammar books and spend that study time reading novels instead. She resisted at first. How will reading help me speak? But she committed to the experiment. Within 6 months, her speaking had transformed. The robotic quality vanished, replaced by natural rhythm and authentic expression. What changed? Reading had exposed Lisa to thousands of natural sentence patterns. Her brain absorbed the rhythm and flow of authentic English. Instead of constructing sentences from memorized rules, she was accessing internalized patterns from extensive reading experience. The efficiency difference is staggering. Traditional methods require conscious processing of multiple rules simultaneously. Let me see, this is past tense, so I need ed, but it's irregular, so went, and I need to remember subject-verb agreement. By the time you process all this, the conversation has moved on. Reading-based fluency works differently. Patterns become automatic. You don't construct sentences, you recognize them. The correct form simply feels right because you've seen it thousands of times in context. This is how native speakers operate, and it's how you can operate too. Research from the University of Edinburgh tracked students for 2 years. One group followed traditional curriculum with grammar lessons, vocabulary drills, and speaking practice. The other group spent equivalent time reading extensively. Regular testing showed the reading group consistently outperforming the traditional group on all measures. But here's the most striking finding. The reading group enjoyed learning more, experienced less anxiety, and continued studying English long after the experiment ended. Traditional methods create negative associations with learning. Reading creates positive associations that sustain lifelong improvement. The implications are revolutionary. Everything we've been told about language learning needs reevaluation. Grammar study, vocabulary memorization, forced speaking practice. These aren't just ineffective, they're counterproductive. They create the illusion of learning while building fragile knowledge that crumbles under pressure. Reading builds robust, permanent language knowledge that grows stronger over time. Each book makes the next book easier. Each story strengthens the foundation for natural expression. It's not just a better method, it's the method your brain was designed for. Now you understand why reading is essential, but knowing what to read can make or break your success. Choose wrongly, and you'll struggle through boring, difficult texts that kill your motivation. Choose correctly, and you'll enjoy every page while your English improves effortlessly. The foundation of successful reading is pleasure. This isn't academic reading where you analyze themes and write reports. This isn't classroom reading where teachers test your comprehension. This is reading for pure enjoyment. And enjoyment is the secret ingredient that makes everything else work. When you enjoy what you're reading, you read more. When you read more, you learn more. When you learn more, you become more confident. When you become more confident, you enjoy reading even more. This positive cycle accelerates your improvement exponentially. But pleasure alone isn't enough. You need the right level of difficulty, challenging enough to promote growth, easy enough to maintain flow. This sweet spot is called comprehensible input, and finding it determines your success or failure. Here's the magic formula. You should understand at least 95% of what you're reading. That means encountering only one unknown word every 20 words, roughly 1 or 2 per page. This level allows you to guess meanings from context while maintaining story comprehension and reading enjoyment. Many students make the critical error of choosing books that are too difficult. They want to read real, literature, or business texts because easy books feel childish. This is a devastating mistake. Difficult books create frustration, slow progress, and eventual abandonment. Easy books create success, rapid improvement, and sustained motivation. I recommend starting with graded readers, books specifically written for English learners at different levels. These aren't simplified summaries of classics. They're original stories crafted with controlled vocabulary and grammar. A level 3 graded reader might use only 1,200 different words, but tells a compelling, complete story. Young adult fiction offers another excellent entry point. These books use accessible language while addressing mature themes that adult learners find engaging. Popular series like Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, or Percy Jackson have captivated millions of readers worldwide, proving that simple language doesn't mean simple stories. Don't overlook graphic novels and comics. The visual elements provide context clues that aid comprehension while introducing colloquial expressions and cultural references rarely found in textbooks. They're also typically shorter than novels, providing frequent completion satisfaction that builds momentum. Contemporary romance novels, despite their reputation, offer valuable language learning opportunities. They contain extensive dialogue, emotional vocabulary, and contemporary expressions. The predictable plot structures help maintain comprehension even when individual words are unclear. For nonfiction enthusiasts, biographies of familiar figures work well. Since you likely know the general story, context helps you understand unfamiliar vocabulary. Self-help books also use accessible language while introducing useful academic and professional vocabulary. The key is starting easier than you think necessary. If a book feels too simple, that's perfect. You want to build confidence and establish the reading habit before gradually increasing difficulty. Success at easy levels creates psychological momentum for tackling harder material later. Genre selection matters too. Choose topics that genuinely interest you. Love cooking? Read food memoirs. Fascinated by history? Try historical fiction. Passionate about technology? Explore science fiction. Personal interest overcomes language barriers and sustains motivation through challenging passages. Length considerations are crucial for beginners. Start with short stories or novellas rather than epic novels. Completing a book provides psychological satisfaction and motivation to continue. Success breeds success in language learning. Consider rereading favorite books. The second reading is always easier and more enjoyable. You catch details missed initially while reinforcing vocabulary and structures. Many successful English learners read beloved books multiple times, each reading deepening their language mastery. Digital books offer advantages for language learners. E-readers provide instant dictionary lookup without breaking reading flow. You can adjust font sizes, highlight passages, and track reading statistics. Many platforms offer free classics and contemporary fiction. Audiobooks combined with text create powerful learning synergy. Following along while listening connects written and spoken forms, improves pronunciation, and increases processing speed. This dual input accelerates language acquisition significantly. Library resources are often overlooked goldmines. Most libraries offer extensive collections of graded readers, young adult fiction, and audiobooks. Many provide digital access to thousands of titles through apps like Libby or Overdrive. These resources are typically free with library membership. Don't forget about series. Once you connect with characters and storylines, subsequent books become easier because you're familiar with the writing style, recurring vocabulary, and character relationships. Series reading provides sustained engagement that individual books sometimes lack. Track your progress to maintain motivation. Keep a reading journal noting titles completed, pages read, and personal reactions. Seeing your growing list of finished books provides concrete evidence of improvement and encourages continued effort. Remember, the best book for you is the one you'll actually finish. Don't let perfectionism sabotage progress. Choose books that excite you, match your current level, and promise enjoyment. Every page you read makes the next page easier. Here's a number that will change your life: 1 million words. That's the approximate amount of English text you need to read to achieve true fluency. It sounds enormous, but let me break it down and show you why this journey is not only achievable, but absolutely transformative. 1 million words equals roughly 25 to 30 full-length novels or 50 to 60 shorter books. If you read just 2,000 words per day, about 15 to 20 minutes of comfortable reading, you'll reach 1 million words in approximately 18 months. That's less than 2 years to transform your English from struggling to fluent. But here's what makes this journey extraordinary. The changes don't happen linearly. They happen in dramatic leaps at predictable milestones. Understanding these stages will help you stay motivated during challenging periods and recognize your progress along the way. At 100,000 words, reading begins feeling natural. You stop translating individual words and start understanding phrases directly. Your brain recognizes common patterns automatically. You notice improvement in your speaking confidence because familiar expressions come to mind more easily. At 300,000 words, vocabulary expansion accelerates dramatically. You encounter the same words in multiple contexts, creating deep understanding beyond simple definitions. Grammar patterns become internalized. You start feeling what sounds correct rather than analyzing rules. At 500,000 words, thinking in English begins. This is a magical threshold where translation stops and direct English thinking starts. You dream in English sometimes. When someone asks you a question, English responses come immediately without mental translation. At 1 million words, English feels like a natural part of you. You understand cultural references, humor, and subtle meanings. Your vocabulary spans various registers from casual conversation to academic discourse. You can engage confidently in complex discussions about abstract topics. Let me share my personal million-word journey with Spanish. I started with children's books, feeling slightly embarrassed but committed to the process. The first 50,000 words felt slow and sometimes frustrating. I questioned whether this approach was working, but around 100,000 words, something shifted. Reading became enjoyable rather than effortful. Spanish sentences started making immediate sense without mental translation. I found myself looking forward to my daily reading time instead of seeing it as study obligation. By 300,000 words, I was reading adult novels comfortably. My Spanish-speaking friends noticed dramatic improvement in my conversation. I was using expressions and vocabulary I'd never consciously studied, but had absorbed through extensive reading. At 500,000 words, Spanish began feeling like a second native language. I started thinking in Spanish during daily activities. Spanish dreams became common. When traveling in Spanish-speaking countries, I no longer felt like a foreigner struggling with communication. Reaching 1 million words in Spanish transformed my entire relationship with the language. It stopped being something I studied and became something I simply used. This transformation didn't happen through grammar books or vocabulary drills. It happened through the accumulated power of extensive reading. The beauty of this journey is that it compounds. Each book makes the next book easier. Each story builds upon previous learning, creating exponential rather than linear improvement. The difficult early stages give way to effortless later stages where reading feels like entertainment rather than study. But motivation can falter during the middle stages, around 200,000 to 400,000 words, when progress feels slow despite consistent effort. This is normal and temporary. Your brain is consolidating massive amounts of linguistic input during this period. Trust the process and keep reading. Tracking your progress provides crucial motivation during challenging periods. Use apps like Goodreads to log completed books or maintain a simple spreadsheet tracking pages read. Watching your word count grow provides concrete evidence of advancement when improvement feels invisible. Choose books strategically during different phases. Early in your journey, prioritize easy, enjoyable texts that build confidence and establish habits. Mid-journey, gradually introduce more challenging material while maintaining predominantly comfortable reading. Later stages allow for authentic, unmodified texts across various genres. Series reading accelerates progress significantly. Once invested in characters and storylines, you're motivated to continue despite occasional difficult passages. The familiar vocabulary and writing style of established series makes subsequent books progressively easier. Consider reading books you've already enjoyed in your native language. Familiar plots reduce cognitive load, allowing focus on language absorption rather than story comprehension. Many learners successfully read Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, or other beloved series in English. Don't underestimate the cumulative power of shorter texts. Blog posts, news articles, short stories, and magazine pieces all contribute to your million-word goal. Variety prevents boredom while exposing you to different writing styles and vocabulary ranges. The million-word journey isn't just about language acquisition. It's about cultural immersion. Through extensive reading, you absorb cultural knowledge, humor, references, and perspectives that make communication truly natural rather than merely grammatically correct. Remember, every word counts. Every page matters. Every book brings you closer to the transformative milestone of true English fluency. The journey requires patience and persistence, but the destination, thinking, dreaming, and living comfortably in English, makes every word worthwhile. The greatest lesson from this reading revolution isn't just about language learning. It's about the power of consistent, purposeful action in transforming our lives. Reading teaches us that mastery doesn't come from shortcuts or magic formulas. It comes from showing up daily, even when progress feels invisible. Every page you read is an investment in your future self. Every story you complete builds the foundation for conversations you'll have, opportunities you'll seize, and dreams you'll achieve in English. This journey reveals a profound truth about human potential. We often underestimate what we can accomplish through sustained effort over time. 1 million words sounds impossible until you break into daily actions. Fluency seems unreachable until you realize it's built one story at a time. The reading approach also teaches us about the beauty of natural learning. We don't need to force knowledge into our brains through painful memorization. We can allow our minds to absorb patterns organically the way nature intended. This principle applies beyond language learning to any skill we want to develop. Perhaps most importantly, reading shows us that learning should be joyful. When we choose materials that excite and inspire us, education becomes entertainment. We stop avoiding study time and start craving it. This shift from obligation to anticipation makes all the difference between temporary effort and lifelong transformation. The students who succeed with reading aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the most persistent. They understand that small, consistent actions compound into extraordinary results. They trust the process even when progress isn't immediately visible. Your English fluency journey through reading is more than language acquisition. It's a masterclass in personal development. It teaches patience, persistence, and the power of compound growth. These lessons will serve you long after you've achieved English fluency. In every area of life where sustained effort creates lasting transformation. Your reading revolution starts today, not tomorrow. Choose one book. Any book that excites you and matches your level. Commit to reading just 10 minutes daily. That's all it takes to begin your transformation. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the first book you're going to read on your journey to English fluency? Share your choice and inspire others in our epic English Stories community. If this video opened your eyes to the power of reading, hit that like button to help other English learners discover this game-changing approach. Subscribe for more breakthrough learning strategies that make English natural and enjoyable. Remember, every fluent English speaker you admire reached that level through extensive input. Your million-word journey awaits. Let's make it epic together.